Hello and welcome to Psyched About Love. I'm Laura Weissman, and with me today is Babita Spinelli. She is a psychoanalyst in New York and New Jersey, and today she's here to talk about the work she does, which focuses on bicultural, biracial couples and how those dynamics affect the relationship. And without further ado, welcome and tell us a little bit more about what you do and what brought you to this, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi, Laura. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
So, as you mentioned, I'm a psychoanalyst with offices in New York and New Jersey. And so in my clinical training, I was deeply fascinated with culture and cultural sensitivity. I worked with several individuals around issues around identity and around race and around their backgrounds. And through that work, I started to then translate that into couples work and relationships and how that ends up playing out in terms of when you have two people that come in from different backgrounds, different experiences with regard to their culture, and how that ends up impacting the relationship beyond just what goes on in couple dynamics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you talk about different cultures and backgrounds, what comes up for me is, as an imago therapist, one of the images that I convey to my clients is that we are very different worlds. And even when we are the same culture, race, religion, we are still completely different worlds because of our own life experiences, the way we perceive things. And so I encourage them to cross the bridge into the other's world. But I imagine that those issues become even more magnified when it really is a very, very different culture, race, religion. So in your practice, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so a great point that you make, because of course in couples work itself, you have that, as you said. But when it comes to different cultures, what feels very powerful is that oftentimes the couples from different cultures are coming in from a place where there might be some intergenerational or issues that have come up in the roots of their families that are very powerful. So where there might have been oppression in the culture itself, trauma in the culture itself. There might have also been the dynamics between the two cultures where one spouse comes from a culture of power and privilege, and one spouse comes from a culture of oppression, repression, trauma. And so we then have this dynamic playing out. So that's just one example of where it sort of is quite impactful in the work.
Yeah, and it's amazing how as you're saying this, it really kind of crystallizes again. Do I love imago? I do, but part of the theory is that we attract into our life our perfect partner, not that's going to help us live in peace and harmony the rest of our life, which would be awesome, but to help us heal those childhood wounds. And so what I hear you saying is somebody who has come from a background of oppression may attract a partner into their life who kind of plays out that role again, and then their work together as a couple, which I think is amazingly spiritual work, is to help heal those wounds, to help them both come into their fullness, with the relationship as the vehicle for that.
Oh, that is beautifully said. That's exactly it. And just by the fact that they are in the space of couples work where they are making an effort to deeply understand each other, like really deeply, and those wounds can be so healing that it ends up then playing out in all sorts of things such as gender roles, money relationships, the relationship to sex and intimacy. All of that comes into play based on that cultural dynamic.
Yeah. And so when you're working with them, how do you help them better understand these issues? Is it psych ed? Is it like actually experiential in the process? How do you work with these issues?
No, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's my role as the therapist to be well informed of the issues.
Yes.
So really deeply understanding, reading about the different cultures when you know you're going to be working in that cultural space. Because cultural sensitivity would come from, first and foremost, from the therapist's own awareness.
Yes.
So, right. So there's that. And even if my values may not match the cultures, that I'm aware that it doesn't. And then that helps in the space of the couples to better understand that things may not match, but that doesn't mean that it's broken. So,
They can
so
be
that's
different.
exactly. So that's one. Another one is around that very theme. So once they are aware of that, they may come from different stories, but now they can create their own story. It's the joining of their stories together. And what does that mean? Because each of them have their histories and their cultures, and as you said, their wounds. So how do they bring that together in a space where they can now say, neither culture necessarily is the right one, so to speak, or the normal one, whatever that means.
Right.
But we're kind of bringing ours together and we're going to create our own.
So you're encouraging them to honor the life experience, the world of the other, where they can both be the right culture, the normal one, because in their world they are, because that's all there is.
Yes. In addition to that, as you said, there's a lot of experiential. So when we get into that space, we start to talk very specifically about techniques around communication and being heard. For example, there's certain cultures that communicating is more reserved and that it might feel aggressive, whereas the other culture would see it as being open and transparent and passionate.
Yes.
And so that piece of it,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
So there are, right? There's specific techniques that you have to look at that because of how they're relating to each other and what are their triggers because of their cultures.
So, okay. So a very specific kind of example. You have somebody from a culture whose communication style normally is very loud and very big, perceived by others as aggressive, but it's just the norm for that culture.
Yes.
And the partner is much more quiet and much more reserved, and so feels very small in the face of that, which also is part of imago, attracting that person. For the person for whom it is normal and is saying, but I'm not angry, I'm not being aggressive, like, how do you bring their awareness to what it's like for the partner in a way that they can hear it? How do you help the partner show up more, the quieter partner show up more, so that the larger maximizer partner can actually hear it?
Mm-hmm. In those situations, we've often gone into role play where one partner actually plays out the role of the other, and we bring up a situation that is challenging between them. It might even have been literally an argument that took place just before the session or a few days before the session. And so we role play the experience from one to the other. They swap. And so that one experiences what the other experiences the partner as.
Very creative.
And we then talk about the feelings around that from an emotionally focused technique perspective as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's quite enlightening. There's also this, like, I think the light bulbs go on when that happens.
Yes.
When we do that role play. And I guide it to make sure that we sort of stay in a place that still feels grounded and, held.
Right. So your role in it is you are guiding them in the process, encouraging them to kind of open up that space that they can truly channel their partner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. So to kind of recap, when you work with couples, you bring your own awareness to the fact that they come from very, very different places in terms of bicultural, biracial, and you are aware that their worlds are very different, but that the couple may be in a space thinking that their partner should be just like them. That, oddly as it sounds, they haven't really internalized the fact that their partner is not them. They're the other. And to be able to hold that space for them to develop and evolve. Okay. So bringing that awareness to them. finding ways, creative ways, I love the role play idea, to help them experience the other's world and just to validate the other's experience so that together they get to write their own narrative to help them grow as a relationship, as a couple in a healthy and accepting place. Yeah, did I get that?
Yes. Oh, absolutely, Laura. And you know, the part of it is when they get to that place, it's how they show up in their worlds within their own families and whatever noise that they feel like they experience in the world. As much as we want to say, we, you know, idealize that we're in a mosaic, that these couples still often feel like outsiders in terms of the fact that they come from different cultures and they're in a biracial relationship.
Yeah.
So this sort of restorative inner empowerment of them and
Yes.
reclaiming their narrative in a new way projects out into their world that very grounded way of being.
And self-acceptance and wholeness. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for bringing that insight and creativity and passion to us today. And again, Babita Spinelli is located in Manhattan and in New Jersey. And please feel free to reach out and contact her with any issues and support that you can use. Lovely talking.
Thank you so much, Laura. Same
My
here.
pleasure. Bye-bye.